to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today's show is sponsored by East End Interiors. And I am very delighted and honored to announce that not only is East End Interiors sponsoring this show, but they are a sponsor of Luann Live, and they are our exclusive VIP sponsor for Luann Live. That's right. Registration is open at luannlive.com, and if you choose the VIP level ticket, you're in for a big treat. At the VIP level, not only do you get full access to the entire 2.5-day event, you get the swag, the recordings, and most importantly, you get 6 roundtable discussions that are intimate, personal, and insanely valuable. Imagine yourself with no more than 2 other attendees and 6 opportunities to pick the brain of my outstanding experts for a full 30 minutes each. Okay? This is worth the ticket price alone for VIP, hands down. To learn more and to sign up, go to luannlive.com. Okay, now, East End Interiors. Awesome family. Awesome company, smart people. I am so grateful that my friend Nancy Gantikalfer introduced me to Sal and Enza. East End Interiors is a trade-only furniture showroom that works with you, assisting you with your projects that involve furniture. This includes case goods, upholstery, accessories, lighting, artwork, mirrors, area rugs, bedding, and wall coverings. The cool thing is, because East End originally started as a design firm working with consumers just like you, before switching their focus to the trade many years ago, they do know how your business works. They know what you need, and they know how to help you manage and how to impress your clients. In my conversations with Sal and his sister Enza, I learned how in-depth their knowledge is and how capable they are in helping you with much more than just furniture selections. East End Interiors provides expertise, industry passion, business savvy, and project styling all wrapped up in one place. I'm so excited to introduce you, or maybe reintroduce you to Sal if you were at Luann Live last year. Here's Sal Campitello. Hi, Sal. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann. It's great to be here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is a long time coming, you and I. It's funny because, Sal, we've had so many conversations. Of course, we met last year through our mutual friend, Nancy Gantikalfer, and you were one of the sponsors of Luann Live. It's about the conversation in 2019. And ever since I've met you and your sister, Enza, you know, you have a lot of valuable insights and information on the, wholesale furniture industry, the designer trade furniture industry. And we've been saying we've got to talk about it on the show. And
Yes.
So here we are, right?
We are. Yep. It's finally here.
That's it. So Sal, first of all, I know about East End Interiors, but tell my listeners a little bit about your company, East End Interiors, located in New York.
So East End Interiors is actually founded by my mother, still active in the business. Actually, both my parents and, as you mentioned, my sister, and it's a family business. My mom started in the industry about 35 years ago, and her former boss retired, and at that point she bought the business and then continued it as East End Interiors. That was 30 years ago. So we're actually celebrating our 30th year in business.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. So we've operated through the years as a design firm with a furniture showroom. And we started as, a smaller footprint. And over the years, we've kind of expanded and moved a few times to, always to a larger location to show more product and bring on more product lines. And about 15 years ago, I joined the business, and my sister was already in the business at that point. And we started doing some trade business. We started, opening our doors to designers and really trying to see how we could service them and ultimately make their lives easier because we knew what the process entailed. We were obviously, on that side of the business for a long time. And then about 7 years ago, we made a decision probably at the point that our business mix was probably 50-50 in terms of trade and design to consumers. But about 7 years ago, we made a decision to just go completely trade only. And so at this point now, we have all of our resources, which again, over the years, we're constantly expanding and offering, more and more product lines to designers. But all of it is available strictly to the trade. We do not deal with consumers directly. We don't have our own projects. So all of our resources, all of our staff is basically there to assist the designer to make them as efficient as possible and obviously as profitable as possible. So this way it becomes a win-win.
And that is one of the keys that I think sometimes, many times, we don't consider that when we are the customer. So in this case, the designers are your customers. But a lot of times we have to just remind ourselves that the partner, the vendor partner that we're working with, really is as invested in us being successful because, as good business people, we understand that their success is our success. And so when you talk about how everything that you do now supports the designer and their business and coming from the experience of your mom having been that designer selling retail and selling to consumers, you know exactly what the designers need to be supported and to be profitable, right?
Absolutely. And if I could just share a little quick story in the very beginning when we were kind of breaking into the trade business, a designer came into the showroom and I was having a nice conversation. And I said, do you get involved with furnishings? Do you sell, upholstery and case goods? And designer turned to me and says, you know what? I really don't like to get involved with that. It's nothing but headaches. I don't make a lot of money. And honestly, I just like to do, kitchens or, window treatments, things like that, things that I can control a little bit differently. And honestly, it hurt my ears to hear that. And I remember I went back to, to my family at the time and I said, this is not good. I said, they're missing out on a tremendous opportunity. So in fact, that kind of helped shape how we developed from that point because the approach that we took is really a way for a designer to look at us more like a partner that would kind of have their back and give them the support that's necessary without having to incur their own overhead. And ultimately to be profitable. The designers should be able to make good money doing this. And it shouldn't be arduous and something that you want to avoid. And certainly not something that you want to turn away and just have the customer, let's say, go buy retail on their own. You're missing out on a tremendous potential for profit.
Right. And it is so true because we sometimes turn away, like this particular designer did, from the furniture because of what she said. It just is, it seems like a headache. It seems maybe there's too many moving parts, or when something goes wrong, chasing the deficiencies is difficult or time consuming. And it's funny because I think for each of us, I heard you say that, she was like, I'd rather do kitchens or window treatments. I'm like, they're just as crazy pants. Like they're just as crazy pants as and chasing deficiencies and things that can go wrong. But it becomes so what it does is it says to me, it comes down to your comfort level with it, right? It becomes the bear that you know. And so in her case, she didn't know as much about furniture. And so it intimidated her. And it's
Right.
interesting because, Tracy Connell, which I know you know her because she's one of your clients that orders from you at
Yep.
East End, right?
Mhm.
She
Yep.
just did the course for us that ended earlier this summer. Buy wholesale for profit. And the entire premise of the course was let's make sure you understand everything about this chain, about the distribution, about the players, and about the margins and the markups and the things that have worked for Tracy in being successful and helping contribute to her bottom line. And so and she really did stress often in the course your trade partners like you, how valuable they are to you as an interior designer, right? So, Sal, talk to us a little bit about some of the services or some of that value that a designer trade showroom like yours does provide to a designer. What are the benefits to a designer in working with your company or others like yours?
Well, I mean, right from the start, a designer has a new project, for example, and they need to get the ball rolling. So, the benefits of coming to a trade showroom that like in our case, that's multi-line and that's very knowledgeable in the product lines that we carry. There's designers get a tremendous amount of work done in a relatively short period of time. As a matter of fact, we have designers that travel, quite a distance. Here on Long Island, it's, traffic is not the greatest. Um, so,
See, everybody that doesn't know Long Island is like, oh, not so great. Hello.
yeah. So, but we have designers coming from, a good, 45 minutes plus, and sometimes even further. But they'll come to our showroom and literally spend the day
Mm-hmm.
or a good portion of the day. Sometimes they'll meet with more than one client in the showroom, and we serve lunch, and we always have fresh coffee and refreshments and everything, so it's comfortable. That's like a daily routine for us. But the benefits is that they can come in and get a lot done in a relatively quick period of time. So it's almost like having very highly qualified assistants on hand. So
Mm.
our designers, we have designers on staff, but they are essentially really highly qualified assistants that assist designers in their research. So
Mm.
time is money. So if you're going to make X amount of dollars on an item that you're going to sell, isn't it wouldn't it behoove you to just get to that point quicker than having it drawn out, having to go to maybe 3 or 4 different locations to put everything together? So one of the benefits is efficiency and assistance with research.
Mm.
And that's just the beginning. There's a lot of technical assistance that we offer, and it's hard. I mean, so many product lines have their little nuances, what you can and can't do, what you can combine it with, what you can't combine it with. How custom is there semi-custom? What are the breaking points before the budget starts getting, just ridiculously disproportionate? So we're able to kind of guide them and steer them in a way that allows the project to unfold smoothly. Oftentimes, they'll be in the showroom with their clients, their customers, so we'll have the opportunity to also assist them, with educating the clients. So it's again having that support, um, and even beyond that, when it actually becomes an order, and because of the business that you're in, but there's always a tremendous amount of surprises that come about and delays, and COVID is one aspect of it, but honestly, before COVID, we were dealing with this all the time.
Exactly.
It's
Yep.
just one more thing, to have an excuse for. But we manage that. We have an office staff that handles that day in and day out for not just one designer, every single designer that purchases from us. And the other thing too, the reality of this business, like many businesses, is there's claims.
Mm,
I tell designers all the times, if we don't have problems, that means we're not doing business.
right.
Uh, so I have a person that's practically full time that just handles claims and resolutions, and some are very simple, others get ultra complicated. But the point is, we handle that as part of our in-house staff. An independent designer has so much available in terms of resources that they can rely on without having to assume that overhead and staff on their part. So, I mean, those are just some of the benefits.
Mm. So just to be clear, for example, if I am an interior designer and I'm going to place orders myself for, whatever the furniture companies I use at whatever levels, and we'll get into that in a few moments. But if I'm placing the order directly with the furniture company, no matter what the deficiency is, whatever the reason for the claim, whether it's our mistake, the customer's mistake, the shipper's mistake, the actual furniture company's mistake, in house, I've got to keep chasing that rabbit. I've got to keep saying, hey, where's the remake? Hey, when is it going to ship? When is the guy going to come fix it? I got to do all that. But when I place an order through you, then I simply advise you of the problem. And then I ask you once a week, how is everything going with getting my problem resolved? Correct?
Pretty much. Pretty
Right.
much. I
Right.
mean, it's you're not spending a majority of your time chasing the problem. I mean, we do our best to keep everybody updated. And listen, we often get answers that we're not happy about,
Right.
and we're certainly not happy to be the ones to have to call the clients and explain it. But we do our best to stay on top of things, so we just keep the open line of communication.
Right.
And it's like I said before, if there's no problems and no challenges, that only means we're not doing any business, because all the designers that we work with on a regular basis, could all attest to having claims and obviously having them resolved in a way that's been satisfactory. Not always the most pleasant experience when you're going through it, but you get to a point where it's taken care of and we move on and you get to the next project.
No, I mean, look, it's business, right? It's there.
Mhm.
What in any thing that we do, life, personal, anything goes perfectly all the time. It's impossible. It's an impossible statement. But the
Mhm.
thing about it is that you're always on the lookout for the companies, the vendors, the trades who handle the problem well. That's all it is. It's just, can I rely on you to handle the problem? And can I rely on you? In this case, I would think there's times when I would need to rely on you for your expertise in situations where maybe the furniture manufacturer is saying he said, and I'm the designer saying she said, and you in the middle might be like, hey, I have some history here. I understand both sides of the story. This is what I think. Like, because a lot of times that's what it is. It's really getting a perspective that isn't just your own egocentric perspective. And that's the value of having somebody like yourself and the rest of your team at East End that is, experienced in this, instead of me just demanding something from a fabricator or a manufacturer that I might not have the slightest idea if it's a reasonable expectation, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing too is we have a long-standing history with our vendors. Most of which we do, you know, very good business with. It also helps to plead the case. From our perspective, we generally are able to get a little bit more of a compromise in our favor when
Mm-hmm.
push comes to shove. And that, again, that's something that benefits the designers. And a lot of times, they'll notice, they'll realize that. They'll say, you're better off, speaking to them about it. You obviously have a more established relationship, and hopefully they'll listen and accommodate. And the reality of it is, we don't always get the answer we want when something has to get resolved. But in our opinion, and this has really kind of been the hallmark of since my parents started the business in 1990. But we always do the right thing.
Right.
Barring being unreasonable, okay, or accommodating some sort of unreasonable request. but we often step into the gap and take care of something. And we often go above and beyond what maybe our manufacturers are willing to, to do in terms of resolving an issue, because it's meaningful for us,
Right.
and we realize the importance, that it holds for the designer.
Right. Well, the relationship there is for both ways. So, for example, you are likely to get at least a different look at a situation from the furniture manufacturer because you are their repeat client. It isn't just one order that you have with them. You have 25 orders, you have 35 orders with them. And so they're willing to come to the table a little bit, probably with a little bit more of an open mind, to get to resolution. And it's the same when you turn and look back at the designer who you're working with. It's you understand now you're in that position that you're a designer who has either brought me tons of business with a history already or has the potential to continue to bring more business to East End. So you're now motivated to, be that person that looks a little bit deeper, looks a little more carefully, and looks a little bit more closely for the resolution that is going to create the best outcome for everybody. I mean, the whole point of it is a customer service based model. It's a relationship based model. It's not a one off, let me place an order wherever, whoever and whatever we're talking about, but that your business with the brands relies on your relationship with them. I know I always see you and Enza down at market whenever it happens. I'm sure you're there
Sure. Yeah.
solidifying your relationships and looking for new ones. And then the same with you with the designer, for the designer to be somebody that is you recognize is valuable to you because they can bring more business. It's the same with us with our designers with Window Works. I say it all the time. I don't really want to cancel on the fly one of my retail clients for an installation because a designer woke up today and said, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell you the photographer's coming on the day after. Can we install
Right.
today?" But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to if I can. Let's be
Right.
serious,
Sure.
right? I
Sure.
mean, that designer is not just one order. It's 10, 20, 30 orders. It's a history or it's a potential history. And so there is some there's just a level of customer service that we take when we know we're dealing with somebody more than over and over and over, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
very good. I love it. Okay, so the other thing is that you were describing to me. Let's get into this conversation a little bit about RSP and designer trade and stocking dealer and all of this. And so just for argument's sake, just check me because I've had this conversation a couple of times. I don't do this for a living. And so
Hmm.
I just always want to make sure I'm understanding it. So stocking dealer, this is typically one of the lowest price points that you can purchase furniture at. And I actually said that one time, I think a month ago, and somebody said, "Well, there is another one that's lower." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." Okay. But I think for the most of us, stocking dealer is that you meet minimum volume, you meet minimum blah, 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 blah. And it's not that easy to get because it's originally designed for people like yourself that stock product for other people to look at. And then next level up is designer trade, which is basically designers have access to trade showrooms like yours where you have purchased at the wholesale stocking dealer level and they purchase the next level up. And then there is manufacturer suggested retail price, purchase price, which is retail, which is what we're going to find if we go into Bob's Big Boy or whatever those places are. Am I got that right for all of the people that don't already know this?
Yeah, I think you laid it out pretty clear. I mean, to that point of like lower than stocking dealer, some companies may have like some sort of container option if you're
That's what it was,
bringing if you're
container.
if you're bringing in containers of product from one specific vendor. Usually, it's product coming from overseas. But that aside,
Right. That's
yeah,
unusual.
yeah, unless that's your business model where you bring in just a ton of product and you're selling kind of as shown items. But in the world of custom, you don't really see too much container business.
That
Um,
would be more for the probably the big furniture stores on the highways, like big volume furniture stores.
Certainly, or anyone that's maybe doing like maybe a lot of model homes, staging, things of that
Okay.
sort.
Okay.
I've seen it with that as well.
And I
But
hear what you're saying. It's not necessarily designed for the custom design luxury market because you're going to buy 45 of that sofa. And what?
or instead of 45 of that sofa, you may have to buy 45 items from that specific vendor. So maybe you're going to get like 5 sofas, 25 dining chairs. You're
Yes.
getting a lot of product from a very specific vendor. Which again, in the design world of kind of this custom, semi-custom that we do, it's we don't see it too common where container business is really prevalent.
Okay, and I could see it with model homes and so forth. Okay, okay. So working on our, stocking dealer, designer trade, and retail. You have said to me in person that you loved the Eric Ross episode, and for anyone who has missed it, Eric Ross is a very well-known luxury interior designer out of Nashville. He's an author. He's wrote a tremendous book on design, and for all of you who love all of that designy stuff that we don't do on the show, his book is amazing for beauty and his work and his projects and his portfolio. But he literally said, I operate as if I'm a retail store. This is how I present to my clients. You are paying the retail price to me. And you have mentioned to me a time or two that you sort of are in alignment with this philosophy a little bit. But tell me exactly what you want to say about this, Sal.
So I'm actually very much in alignment with that philosophy. I think that's a smart approach, for every designer to consider, because in our experience we found that to be the most profitable, format. When we started expanding on our trade business, um, one of the things that we did is we kind of looked at everything in reverse. What we did is, because again, obviously, as a trade showroom and a multi-line, we're focused on providing, a variety of product lines, different styling options, different pricing points, different levels of customizations, all to the design trade. So, you know, but we had to make sure the numbers made sense. So what we did, instead of looking at it, in the perspective of saying, okay, well, how much do we need to sell it for to make money? And then unfold the pricing scale from there. We actually did it in reverse. We actually said, what should the customer pay for this item? And if the customer pays this amount, what would the designer purchase it at that it would be profitable for them and worth their time, right? So they don't say like that other example I gave you where the designer says there's no money in it, right? So,
Right.
what does the client have to buy it at? What does the designer have to buy it for? And then that tells us what we need to sell it at. And then we looked at it and said, can we make this work? And that's essentially been the format of any product line that we bring on. We always do that formula just the way I said it, because it has to make sense. And then one of the things that we do as a trade showroom is where we're always very aware of a certain manufacturer of what their trade policy is. So if they have a trade tier, our objective is to either meet it or beat it, and give all the service that we just mentioned before. And there's some product lines that maybe just won't open a designer because they just need a certain amount of volume and certain amount of commitment, certain amount of product on the floor. So obviously those are product lines that will re-wholesale, obviously just the same as everything else. But the idea is that we aim to sell the product to the designers at a discounted a re-wholesale price, and in turn that allows them to sell it to the client at some sort of retail level, right? So it's usually, it may not be MSRP, although I have seen designers sell items for MSRP, but typically they are discounted off of the MSRP. Anyway, it could be 10, 20, 30%, usually in that range, depending on what the item is, what the price point is. And that essentially, the difference there becomes the designer's profit margin. And when you're working on a project and you look at, let's just take the entire room, and you look at all the items that the customer and the client needs to furnish. If the designer puts themselves in a position to secure all that that purchasing, and they're able to procure all that merchandise, and they have the opportunity to make a profit on a nice profit margin on each of those items. It becomes an extremely profitable project for them, and then one room becomes several rooms,
Mm.
and they become tremendous projects. And we see this day in and day out because we have designers that follow this format, and are doing very good business, and they're very successful.
So I love this way of thinking about it internally for you guys as a team. And I understand what you're saying is all the different items that you have available, you can't just sit there as East End Interiors and say, okay, we're going to just do this amount of markup on every product. So you start with, I just want to review it. You
Mhm.
start with, what do we think the end consumer would pay or should pay for this particular item from this particular vendor? So Sally Smith's client, what's a reasonable? So you probably are looking at MSRP and blah blah blah, MRSP. I don't know what the heck it is.
Yep. MSRP. Yep.
MSRP. Okay, I always say it one way or another. And then you say, okay, so if end consumer, Nancy Jones would pay, $500 for this, what does Sally Smith, my designer client, what does she need to pay for it in order for her to make money? Okay, to make it worth her while, to your point with that one designer, to go through the process of this. And then you look at that number and say, and what number do we need to sell it to Nancy Smith at, or Sally Smith at, in order for us to justify us doing it with all of our service and everything else that we throw into it? And that's how you come up with it. And I love it because it respects everybody along the chain, right? You see, you're not just saying, hey, we're going to make X amount of money on this, and Sally Smith Designer, figure out how to sell it or not. We don't care what your end consumer would think is reasonable or not. Like, you're starting with logically with what is sellable for you as a designer. What can you convert? Because again, we go back to what I said, at the beginning of the show. Their success, a designer's success and profitability, is important to you because without them, you don't exist.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I love it. And so from this, and then the ultimate is that with this model of pricing that you come up with, we're still saying that in for many items across many categories, the designer is still able to sometimes look at their client, and often look at their client and say, and you're still not going to pay the retail price on the street that everybody else is paying. There's this model allows for a designer, depending on the product, to do 10 or 15 or 20% off, which you guys know me. I don't know why that part is necessary. I really don't. But I'm not going to fight City Hall on it. Okay. I know smart people like Tracy Connell really believe that when she can, have that included in her value proposition to her client, that they're getting all of her design, all of her service, all of this beautiful furniture, and it still is whatever percentage off of retail. She feels that that's a great value that she gives to her client. And so I know that there's 1,000 different ways to look at this. I just, as a consumer, I just think to myself, well, if I'm going to buy it from this place or that place, why do I think when I get the extra value and service of an interior designer, do I think I'm going to pay less for it? It's illogical to me, but that's
Right.
for a
And
different show.
actually, and let me clarify,
Okay.
because I don't suggest for one moment that the designer should be more competitively priced than, let's say, an alternative retail option, or
Mm-hmm.
some online e-tailer.
Right.
That's not what I'm
No,
suggesting,
I know you're not.
because they're very likely to be far more aggressive with their pricing. And as a matter of fact, what a lot of these competing retail operations do is, they look for, at least in my experience, we found they look for a consumer that has worked with a designer that has everything done, right? So it's essentially like handing the order to them on a silver platter.
Mm.
And that's where it gets a little dicey and dangerous, because that's where the designer needs to make sure that they are secured in getting that order from the client, because that I've seen it, too many times where designers don't, have their letter of agreement worded correctly, and they provide their clients with a tremendous amount of service, often not getting paid really what they should. And then the client has the freedom and the ability to basically source the product somewhere else. Usually that retailer, the work is all done.
Yes, they hit the jackpot. They get an order instead of having to design a room.
And at that point, they're just, it's just a numbers game for them.
Right.
It's like picking up the phone and taking an order. I mean, this is not the weeks and months that go into putting together a project.
Right.
So, in my opinion, the designers don't necessarily have to focus on being, less than the competing retail operations, but rather, as you mentioned, and like Tracy mentioned, is to focus on the value that they add in their services, and that they could justify being a little bit more.
Right. Well, and like I said, this is, as far as Tracy is concerned, again, there's 5,000 different items that she's going to specify into our project and the different levels. I just know that, to your point, if she's working with a company like yours and she can make her margins, because that's the thing, she's not playing around. She knows exactly what margin she is going to make on every product. And if she can make her margins and then give her client a little, gimme on it, fine. Okay. But you're right. She's not focusing on competing with a furniture store by any stretch of the imagination. Right. But that is a slippery slope for the much less experienced designer. I find it with the entry level designer. I find it with the rising designers. I find it where they've got everything organized to the point where they've got their design fees, under control. And then there is no capturing of the guaranteed of the furniture buy. And that is that elusive middle step. And it's a combination of confidence and expertise and also actually know-how, how to structure that LOA, how to structure the conversation. And I know that we had Cheryl Clendon on, and of course the episode, we'll put it in the show notes. And she talked about how every project that she does has a guaranteed minimum product buy. And she discussed in that episode how she frames that conversation and why it's so important to do it, to your point that, she's not going to run the business the size that she does on design fees alone. It does have to come with having product in the mix. But that's a nuance there in education, learning, and experience and confidence in getting to that point, to being able to say, thanks so much for doing this project with me, and we agree we're going to spend $100,000 on furniture, so.
Right. And we, when we were working with consumers, we tried every single format because, times are changing and we, you come across different challenges. But we found it to be very wise in the beginning of a project to present a budget to the client. And what we would do is after that budget was agreed upon, we would actually secure a retainer that would be tied to a certain dollar amount that they had to spend. So this way, the expectations were set. And that, in my opinion, is very critical in the beginning. It's a little bit of extra work, but we found that it pays dividends in the end. Before that, there were times where we would start a project. You think their vibe. You think you're on the same page. We started doing all this work and then present them with these options. And they were, sometimes they come and say, I had no intention of spending that kind of money. And it's after like the second or third meeting to come to that point. Right. You quickly say, all right, we cannot do this. This is we got to take care of this from the beginning. So we found it to be very smart to take a few extra steps in the beginning, give them an idea of what the project could look like, what they could be spending, always present it in a range. So this way they're not kind of locked into a very specific number, but ultimately that they would have to agree upon it and then give it a retainer, which would, again, tie into them spending a certain dollar amount.
So that is, that is based on your own experience for when you were dealing with consumers, and it is one of the ways that you recommend designers do it now when you work with them at the trade level. So, and just explain it to me a little bit. So, we've got a potential client. We were doing our meetings. Maybe we are. I don't know what point we at. Did we sign the LOA? Did we do the design plan? I don't know what point we're at, but you'll tell me. But the idea is that you are from your experience, you know that it is beneficial if you bring up the concept of budget and you set the anchor numbers in a range so that you get the temperature of the client, you get the if the client is serious or not. And so tell me how you do it without investing too many hours. I don't think you're designing the room and picking everything. Is it that you're saying, okay, I'm working with this client and this client strikes me, because we all can pick up certain cues based on the number of
Right.
interactions we've had. This sounds like this is going to be a $10,000 a sofa client, or this seems like it'll be a $20,000 sofa client. This seems like it'll be a $10,000 area rug client. Do you just build a budget on specifics and what you think, and then you throw the number out higher, high and low around it? How do you do it, Sal?
So let's just say you're at the initial consultation,
Okay.
just to start it from there, right? So you're meeting, let's say for the first time in the home. Obviously it's important to see the space that you're going to be working in. You see how the client set the stage, right? You kind of get a lay of the land, a sense of what they're going for. What we used to do is, it seemed like common sense, and a lot of designers do this. We used to ask a client, what's your budget? Okay. And every time we got an answer, it was never the right answer. And then it became more challenging for us to have to try to explain why that number is not realistic. And obviously you're not going to do that in 5 minutes. It was part of the process. And then ultimately get them to the point where they really, needed to be. So one day it dawned on us and we said, you know what, let's not ask them what the budget is, because we're never going to get the right answer. We never did. Okay.
No.
Whatever they say, it's never enough for relative to what they need to get accomplished. So what we would do is, on the initial consultation, is we'd give them a lot of great ideas and suggestions. So this way you can see their reactions and, get a sense of what they like and don't like. But we would tell them that we were going to put together a preliminary presentation and that we would set a meeting with them, the next week. And now we didn't, along with that presentation, let me just add that they would get a budget so to give them an idea on what things would cost and how much, they would need to spend. And they would always give, okay, sounds great, right? Because you're not asking them for anything else at this point. You're basically telling them, let me present to you some ideas, and we'll do it. We always would do it typically like a week later, the next week. We would do this very often, so we did it very quickly, very efficiently. We would put together some ideas. We would always focus on one area, because you can't really go through, even if it's a big project, it's always going to be one area at a time. So there's no need to do a preliminary design for an entire house. So we would always focus on one specific area that we felt was the most important to them. And we would actually go back, pull some options, and pull together a presentation. We would literally lay it on the table. It could be tear sheets, it could be fabrics laying, and options. Very, nothing locked in, of course, but just to give direction and idea of what, where the project could be going. And again, we would do this so often that we would do this very quickly. We didn't do floor plans, okay, because that would be a little bit more time consuming. But, there were times that if a room was very challenging, my mother would come back and say, you know what, I want to see it on a floor plan because I need to see it for myself. And
that would be for her own personal.
And she would do it for her own personal reason. And we did it. It's fine. It was a little extra work, but it obviously paid to do it. So following that, that meeting, and you do some prep work, They would come in. We would always try to have it at our showrooms. This way, you're kind of like at the home base now,
Mm.
and you have everything there, kind of to work to your advantage. You have the vignettes displayed, you have products on display, you have all the sales aids and fabric samples and finishes and things like that. So we always found it advantageous to do it that way. Um, and then the meeting would start not with the letter of agreement, not with the numbers. It would start with the creative part. We would show them the design ideas and the concept, and we would get them very excited. And usually, designers, being good at what they do, they're pretty good at nailing, the nail on the head. Um, the client, may not love everything or be locked into everything, but it would get them excited and kind of the ability to envision what it could start to look like. Then after that creative aspect of the presentation, then we would come with them with our letter of agreement, which would include the budget. And the budget would basically be a line item to the best of our ability, because there's a lot of things that are going to be TBDs, to be determined, that may take more time to develop. But we would get some of the staple items on that budget, and we would give them a range based, and it would be based off of some of the items that we presented. So, if you say, okay, your dining table, well, okay, we have a low and a high, and here's the range. And, we showed you, two different tables in this presentation. One happens to be in the middle, and the other one is a little higher. But this is the range that you're going to really kind of be within. And then along with the budget, we would also end it with the retainer that would be required to get to start the relationship. And that was part of the process. And I have to say, if the client was, let's say, just not on board to spending the money, the best thing is you don't waste any more time with them. You're done. Okay. So it's that was, that's one aspect. It doesn't drag on where you're researching, above and beyond what you should be doing because they're trying to save money. And they're looking for something maybe that doesn't exist at the price point that they're looking for. So you get that right out of the way in the beginning. But when they do sign on and they do give that deposit, now they have some skin in the game, and we found that they were all in. I mean, that at that point there, it's like we had their focus, and we found that the projects ended up going much smoother from that point on. And less issues with price resistance. And, I found this here, I found this cheaper, I went online and I saw this. We made it very clear in our agreement that that's not how we work. If you work with us, and this is what I recommend for all designers, and, it's, again, some of the points that Eric mentioned in his podcast, that, the designer provides the client with the services based on the fact that the client is going to purchase from them, period.
Right. So what I like about this is, first of all, this is proven. You've did it for many years successfully. But if I understand correctly, this could actually be a chunk out of so somebody like a full service interior designer, they are going to have one fee for their design services. And look, we're not going to get into whether they need to or should or anything, but I know there are designers like Tracy, like Sandra Funk, the higher end designers, where they have a design fee part of the agreement, and then they have the furniture and product part of the agreement, right? So the idea is that this approach could be used for that middle part, not in exclusive of and not in exception of. So you have your whole design fee conversation. And if I hear this process correctly, it also depending on your level of expertise, you might be a rising designer now and not really familiar with this. So you could do it the way you just did it, in that you're separating out this section of the furniture. And what you're saying, Sal, is when you're doing that initial presentation of product, you said it. We're not necessarily doing a floor plan. We're not picking every product to completion. We're not really deciding on this fabric or definitely that chair. We're having some tear sheets. We're having some fabrics. We're saying this is sort of what this room could look like. And based on this, if it all, you have to know, this is where as a designer, you have to do your homework. You have to know your price points. You have to know what rooms cost when you design them. Because Sally Smith's living rooms, all the products and products in her living rooms come to 150,000, and Debbie whatever, hers come to 28,000. I mean, we all have our different price points that we work in. So that's where it's important that you need to know your aesthetic, your brand, where you swim, right? But
Right.
so what you're saying is that if I do this and I put this together, and maybe the first time I do it, it takes me an hour and a half because I'm not that skilled. But it finally, I'm sure, takes your team a half hour, 40 minutes to put this together. Now you plug all the numbers in and you're like, you know what? This living room is going to cost $78,000. So now, if I understand correctly, you're going to sit there and say to the client, at this moment, and the budget for this living room, depending on, you love these things, we're not at final selection, is going to be anywhere from 75 to 110, $120,000. And they say, love it, yes. And then you are collecting a retainer on that amount. And you're saying, hey, write the first check for 50 grand and we're going to get going. And then am I right on that part? You're going to collect that kind of money at this point?
We get it may not be that high of a retainer. I made a mistake, on one of the projects that we did. The budget was, well over 200,000. And I had asked for, I can't remember, it was maybe a $30,000 retainer. And all of a sudden they disappeared. Like I didn't hear from them or anything. And I realized that, again, as I mentioned before, even large projects start one area at a time.
Okay.
And you're not going to design, or typically designers will do an area and then you secure the orders, right? You're not going to design the entire house and then wait 6 or 8 months to place the order as one big order.
Right.
Usually as you work through, you place the orders, you secure your fabrics, you're securing all your goods. Otherwise, inventory and stock level changes and things like that. So we found that the retainer didn't have to be such an intimidating amount, but it was just enough to make sure that they had some skin in the game. Because at the end of the day, the message was this: we will provide you with these services based on the fact that you're going to purchase from us. At any point, if we provide you with service and then you do not meet us with ordering, and let's say you start buying somewhere else or playing games or doing something of the sort, the relationship is over at that point.
And you keep the retainer.
And we keep the retainer.
Okay, I'm understanding this now, and this is where my disconnect now. I'm actually doing this day to day, so I can hear what you just said. I hear it especially from a sales standpoint. What you're saying is, if I turn around and tell you your living room is going to be 75 to 110K, and I want a $10,000 retainer on that, that is not so intimidating for me as the consumer, because it's only my second meeting with you. I hear what you're saying. I've had a phone call conversation, I've had a consultation, and now I've had a loosey-goosey presentation, but I'm excited about it, and I can see that I like you, and I can see that you know what you're doing. So 10,000 isn't that scary, or 5,000 is not that scary. And then my guess is, the next time you come to me with the actual design presentation, and this is your actual sofa, and this is your actual floor plan, and this is your actual everything, then that's where a designer might say, and now I want 50,000 of that 120,000 or something like that. I think I have to say, I keep bringing Tracy up only because I know that with the course, I've had a lot of conversation with her about it. I want to say I think she gets 100% at that point, but it's designed. The selections are made. Like her team puts it all together.
And that makes sense, though, because if you're doing all that work up front, then
right,
then that makes sense.
You're not doing it as you go along. She's delivering it. Boom.
What we would do is, after let's say after that second meeting, one or two meetings after that, they're placing, something's getting ordered at that point.
Right.
So as long as the ball is rolling and you guys are all moving in the right direction, that's really the key.
Right. And you just keep, yeah.
Listen, we've had clients, and we've experimented. I mean, we had clients that came from very good referrals, and I remember my mom said, this is a recommendation from a client that she had done several houses for, and we just made a decision. We didn't charge a retainer. We just started we obviously everything was pre-qualified. We were comfortable. They were comfortable. All the right, cues were in place. So but we took a chance.
Right,
Uh,
right, right.
and and it worked. It worked.
Right,
I don't
because there
I
was a
don't
lot of
recommend.
history there.
There was a
Yeah,
lot of history and credibility, right? I
right.
mean, that's essentially what it. Designers would ask me this question: well, what happens if you go to the next area? Like, let's say if I only got the retainer for the living room, and now they want to do, the dining room, or do I get another retainer at that point? And my answer is you could, but if the customer has established credibility with you and they understand the process, do you really think it's necessary? What's the likelihood that after they just spent 78,000 with you, that now they're going to start messing around and wasting your time?
Yeah,
So
I like that, Sal, because you're saying if a designer has, we're talking a lot mostly to the rising designers, the established seasoned designers and C-level designers, they get this already, right? But I love this because this is where the questions lie for the rising designers, right? So it's like, what we're saying is that there are good business practices, but there's always the place to evaluate really what's happening in the relationship. And if a designer has just spent 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a process with somebody and they've spent 70, 80, 100,000 and they want to turn to the dining room, it might be insulting to say, can I have another
exactly,
5,000, right?
exactly,
Yes.
exactly, exactly. I think so. And the other thing too, in terms of the budget. So by outlining that budget in the beginning, it's helpful because every time you present um, part of that plan and it's within the budget, you're meeting the criteria.
Right. Where's
So
the argument? Right.
exactly. Now, you know how many times we would have a budget for something and then the client would end up going way above it because
Exactly.
now, and you know what? That's fine.
Right.
That's
When it's
they're
their
always
choice,
they're
right?
always allowed to spend more. Okay.
Yes. We should put that on our front doors.
Yeah.
You're always allowed to spend more.
The key is this. If you're going to tell them that an item, has a budget within a specific range, it's your duty to present them options within that range. However, if you come across something real creative that's beyond that range, it's okay to say, listen, we're at meeting number 6 or 7 now. At meeting number 2, I didn't see this coming, but this is a real spectacular piece. It's more than what we have budgeted for. It's your call.
Right.
And when they're engaged in the process and they're committed and they have trust in the process and in the designer that they're working with, it's amazing how the wallets open up. And if they have the resources and they could justify the value for themselves, they'll spend it. But, in the very beginning, to put all that demand on them without having had them, warm up to it, it's very hard. It's very hard to get them to give such a high level of commitment, let's say on the first meeting.
Right, right. And the truth is right there. The nuance in that is so well made, Sal. And I just want to repeat it. When you just said, if they have the resources and they can justify the value in their own mind, this is the crux of the luxury client who will consistently go out of budget themselves when those two things happen, when they have the resources and they can understand and justify the value to themselves. But your other part of the statement is so true. It's after they trust you in the process. So, that same, couple that stands there at day one and thinks to themselves, don't ask me what my budget is because it's whatever I want to spend. In their head, they're not likely to say that out loud, right? But in their
Sure.
mind, they might be, we just liquidated our $1 billion company and we've got $40 million sitting around burning in our
Right.
pockets and we're
Right.
doing our dream house.
Right.
But the thing is, that same client can have that headset on day one, but isn't likely to release that information, or release that buying spree. I don't even want to call it a buying spree, that buying, until they are 2, 3, 5, 6 visits in with you, and they're like, this person I can trust with my money, this person I can trust with, that is recognizing value for me as well. And yes, I'll take 2 of those $20,000 chandeliers, thanks so much. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right.
Right.
You're absolutely right. And you
Right.
know what? It's generally about the same amount of work to sell the $20,000 chandelier as it is to sell the $2,000 chandelier.
Exactly.
So, we talk about profit and margin and everything, without getting into the percentages at this point, but when you're at that level, especially when you excel to the better end goods, you have to look at the dollars at that point. And
Right.
it just equates to, more dollars, the larger dollar sale is really going to become a higher dollar profit for the designer,
Exactly.
relative to, let's say, lower price point goods at a high margin. It still may not equate to more
Right.
money,
Right.
So, this all goes hand in hand.
Right. I could sell 3 $200 chandeliers, and make, $60, or you can sell one $3,000 chandelier and make $600, right? So it's like whatever look, I think by and by most designers are always striving to go to the more custom and semi-custom route like you describe, where the client is has higher expectations, but has more expendable income in order to do it, and just higher places of emphasis on what their home means to them, and the way they want it expressed, and the quality they want inside of it, right? That's the heart of design. It's a luxury service. Not to discount all of the designers that do help your average person have a beautiful home. There's tremendous value in that as well. But it's just figuring out your lane, I guess, is really the point, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always say this to designers, because I've had so many conversations through the years. And the first thing I'll always say, especially if you're asking a designer to consider a different business model or a different approach in terms of how to be profitable. And I'll always say from the beginning, if what you're doing is working, who am I to tell you differently? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right,
So
right.
and you're really good at kind of pointing that out, in all your conversations. If you're doing something and it's working, capitalize on it, continue
Right,
with it.
right.
There's always exceptions and different sub markets within everything that we do.
And it's the truth. And what's so interesting is because it does start with what we always say is, what do you want? What do you like? My friend Desi Creswell, she starts with, what do you want for your business and what do you want for your life? Figure those two out, and then design the way you're going to build your firm to support that. Because you might have a life's mission. I just spoke with somebody recently who really said, I just want to make design accessible to average people. This is my dream. My goal is to do this. And it was on a discovery call that her and I had a couple of weeks ago. And she said, I'm really committed to this. And I said, that's awesome. We just got to figure out a way for you to make money at it. Because,
Right.
the way it
Yep.
was set up, it was really turning out to be a hobby, because not a hobby, but a passion, a charitable passion, because she hadn't figured the way to translate it to making money. Right. But she's so passionate about it that I believe there is a way for her to do that. Okay. And so that is, like you say, it's everybody for themselves the way they want to do it. But if you have a desire to do this, then don't miss the boat by not making the changes and not making the connections to the understandings and the paths to creating more profit by selling furniture at the different levels that are available to you through the trade. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I love it.
Well said.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So I can't let you go without just letting everybody know that you are our VIP sponsor for Luann Live. So I'm so excited. Of course, we're going to do it virtually, but you know me, it's going to have a major interactive live component, because I don't want to sit there for 2.5 days and look at a screen and not feel my people on the other side of that screen. So we are doing tons of things to create an environment like we had, as much as I can, like we had last year in the actual real Luann Live, right? That was amazing, right, Sal? That
That really
room.
was. Yep, it was such an energy in there. It was you really had to be there.
Yeah, it's funny because I have told other sponsors the story between you and I. And I don't know if I've told you that I've told people, but I remember when Nancy Gans Calford, of course, she was one of the co-authors in the original Volume 1 book of the Power Talk Friday Experts, and
Right.
she was going to be a speaker, obviously, and she told you, she said, Sal, I think you might want to sponsor this event. And you and I had a phone call, and I have to tell you, Sal, I don't know if I ever told you this, but every single person that I spoke to about sponsorship said yes in the first phone call. Sal's from Long Island. He's a New Yorker. Well, I don't know. And how about this? And how about that? And which is fine with me. You know what I mean? Do all your homework, right? And then we have another conversation. And I think it might have been the third conversation that you're finally like, okay, I'm in. But then it was like, and this condition and what that, and then I'm like, it's okay, Sal, whatever you want. I'm gonna figure it out for you. La la la. And
You should have gotten a retainer from me, by the way.
right? Oh my goodness. But the funny thing is when it was over, I don't know if you remember this day, but it was over and it was the end of the VIP day. And it was our half day, and we're saying goodbye to everybody. And there was a line of people waiting to say, goodbye to me and for me to be able to say thank you for them to coming and so forth. And when you come up to me, I was like, oh my goodness, Sal, it was so great to have you and Enza here, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, where do I write the check for next year? And I'm like, that's
That's
so
it.
funny. You're like, I'm dead serious.
That's right. That's right. Well, you know, I I did a little due diligence in the beginning,
Yeah.
but I'm sold and I was convinced, and I saw the value firsthand. So
Mm.
and like I said, the energy that was in that room and all the designers and I mean, listen, people can just listen to your podcast and there's so much residuals in terms of the stories and how so many people have improved since then.
Mm.
It you know,
Yeah.
I had no doubt that we wanted to partner with you for the next one.
I'm looking forward to having you a part of it again. Of course, I love East End Interiors and the way that you support the trade and the designers and the vast business experience that you and Enza and your mother and your father bring to it is just another whole layer of value. And I think that is an actual really intangible value. Having had the experience of selling to the consumer, all those stories and those ways that really learn to do it well is also just one of those intangible things in doing business with you. So I wish you tons of luck, and I cannot
Thank
wait to
you.
see you for our virtual event. And then hopefully 2021 or 2022 will be in person again for Luann Live. So we'll see how it goes.
Soon enough we will, and
Yeah.
we all can't wait. But we're real excited to be part of this, Luann, and we just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity as well.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, Al, for coming today.
Thanks for having me, Luann. Great talking to you.
I'm so glad I got the chance to sit down with Sal and hear his insights, because I came away with a deeper understanding not only of the wholesale furniture industry, but how companies like East End Interiors can benefit your business. I also know from Tracy Connell of Tracy Connell Interiors, who taught our much raved about course, Buy Wholesale for Profit, which is coming back in March, by the way. But I learned from her too that teaming with a company like East End Interiors is one of those major first steps in earning more profit on every project you handle, right? And Tracy, in fact, counts Sal as one of her go-to partners and resources. So wherever you are in the U.S., East End Interiors can service you, okay? And you heard Sal tell the story of a designer who said she didn't see the value in dealing with furnishing, that it was too complicated, and she felt like it wasn't worth her time. So I want to point out here that the reason to work with a trade-only resource like East End Interiors is that in addition to the service and the expertise, it is exactly so that you can earn more money on the projects you are already doing. So if you have 10 projects this coming year and you sell $200,000 worth of furniture or $2 million worth of furniture, right? If you're not buying it at wholesale, then you are leaving money on the table. All right. This is a time tested business strategy for putting more money in your pocket. Do the same work, do the same projects, do the same hours, but buy it better and put more money in your pocket, right? And so Sal explained that it was during that conversation that made him realize that their family should pivot the business and walk away from the retail facing and walk toward the partnership based business with you, the designer. Okay. Because it's clear that East End Interiors wants to and does go out of their way to support you in everything you need done, from everything being available in the showroom to managing the claims to them leveraging their long-standing partnerships with their manufacturers, all in the end to support you. Okay. So I have to say, if you have that same hesitation or negative connotation of, I don't want to learn furniture, I don't want to sell furniture, you can call Sal and his sister Enza and their entire team. They are passionate about helping you be profitable and successful. And, the thing is that when I talk to Sal, it's almost hard to remember that he's not doing the consumer facing anymore because he's such a font of information on how to manage and negotiate those conversations, right? You could hear it in there, that experience, and he's willing to share it with you. Okay. So if you are one of my rising designers out there and you are feeling nervous about tipping your toe into this, about you're figuring out your pricing, about charging your worth, about asking for the deposit, about setting out, high level budgets with clients, Sal and Enza at East End are available to walk you through this so you can confidently quote and sell furniture. All right. And keep in mind, if you're going to go after that luxury client, you have to realize that what Sal said is true. If they have the resources and they can justify the value in their minds, they will spend it, but only after they trust you and they see you as the partner who will take them and their home where they want to go and how they see it. Okay. I tied this back into what Desi Creswell has said to me, which is first to ask, what do you want for your business and what do you want for your life? Then translate that into a way to make money. Okay. So if you are in this, really in this world and determined to make it, you can't be operating as a charity or a hobby. You don't want to hold yourself back. Okay. You need to find ways to create profitability. And design trade furniture is one of those ways that you can do that. So I encourage you to go back and listen to Desi's latest episode, number 557, which is all about the CEO mindset. And so they can really, start to get into that headspace, okay? And I also encourage you to be on the lookout for this March when Tracy Connell does come back with Buy Wholesale for Profit, okay? It will be back in March 2021. And so many designers went through that course and really came away with this understanding of how this business works on the furniture end of it and how to start to leverage these relationships, seek them out, and what it looks like when you do partner with a company like East End, okay? Now, as we mentioned in the episode, East End Interiors is our exclusive VIP sponsor for Luann Live in 2021, all right? There is nothing that I wish more than that if we could hold this event in real person, in real life, okay? But we're going with the flow of 2020 and we're embracing the changes with the things that we're living with right now. But believe me, we are working so hard behind the scenes to make sure that it is exactly as I say it is. Luann Live, it's about the conversation. That means interactive, me talking to you, you talking to me, questions, answers, laughs, and ahas, okay? And fair warning, I just want to tell you, the VIP experience tickets, the VIP experience sponsored by East End Interiors, are strictly limited. Right? Strictly limited. The truth is that there are 69 tickets available at this level. Okay. And the reason is because of that small 1 to 3 interaction on the 6 roundtable opportunities on the VIP day. Okay. So I have to tell you, last year it was killer. Last year when you came, you had to do plane, trains, automobiles, hotel rooms. So I don't expect that the VIP tickets will last long, is really what I'm trying to say. So, jump on it if you want to. If you just want to come at the regular all access 2-day pass, that's awesome too. All right. And I just want to tease out a tiny bit more information. I'm thrilled to tell you that Ariane Belazar will be MC for day 2 of this event, and Carol Cox will be MC for day 1 of this event, okay? These particular ladies are just so amazing and so awesome, and I am so honored that each of them has accepted my invitation to be our MCs, okay? They will be a very huge part in making this a very special day for all of us, okay? Please go to the website, luannlive.com. We're ready. Tickets are open. You can see all the things. Many of the panelists have been identified and selected, and I'm adding more as we go along, okay? So, look. End of the day, it's clear that Sal and everyone at East End are dedicated to creating lasting partnerships with you and offering you assistance every step of the way. So if you know that you need a partner, one that can support you in this area, one that can provide you with education on the process, one that will leverage their partnerships for your benefit, one that will go above and beyond for you, then please consider contacting Sal at East End Interiors, okay? You can get in touch with them at eastendinteriourstrade.com. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm absolutely thrilled that you do choose to spend this time with me every week. I'm grateful for it. And I just, as always, want to remind you to decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannniagara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.